Today's video is very important because we're going to talk about the Ferrari market and engineers, as Vasseur has been outspoken in defending the team. But most importantly, we need to discuss Ferrari's preparation for Singapore, which tire compounds will be brought by Pirelli. And at the end of the video, we'll also look at the driver market with a future perspective, as there's a lot of talk about a possible departure of Leclerc from Ferrari. Regarding the year 2027, Ferrari is targeting another highly significant driver. We will explore everything in this video, but before we begin, kindly ensure to leave a like to support our channel. And now let's delve into all the news in detail. The topic of incoming and outgoing technicians has become one of the most delicate points in Frédéric Vasseur's management at Ferrari. Every departure from the technical department in Maranello ends up in the spotlight, often with more dramatic tones than necessary. Vasseur is right when he talks about normal turnover dynamics. In Formula 1, it's natural for engineers to change teams. However, the difficult season for the Reds makes everything more burdensome and fuels discontent among the fans. Many of the engineers who have left Ferrari in recent months were not responsible for recent successes. However, it is true that several former Maranello employees, once they landed elsewhere, have proven their worth. The most well-known example is that of Laurent Mekies, now team principal of Red Bull, or Andrea Stella, now team principal of Ferrari. On the other hand, Vasseur often recalls a surprising fact. Since that time, approximately 60 engineers have been recruited from rival teams. It's a substantial figure, yet it is seldom emphasized by the media. At this point, an essential distinction needs to be made. Formula 1 is predominantly centered in the United Kingdom. By the year 2026, 10 out of the 11 teams will possess at least one technical headquarters in England. For British engineers, transitioning from one team to another necessitates only a brief distance of travel. For Ferrari, which is based in Maranello, convincing the same professionals to move to Italy is much more complex. Even the economic leverage is not so decisive. With the budget cap, only the 3 highest salaries are exempt from the FIA limits. Therefore, teams cannot break the salary cap to attract the best. But who are these key names that have arrived in Maranello? Since 2023, with the arrival of the Vasseur era, significant reinforcements have come. There are many engineers coming from Mercedes on the aerodynamics side, such as Bonsignore, Kosinska, George Dry himself, and also Cristoforidis. However, the majority of the engineers who have been recruited by Ferrari originate from Red Bull. Consider Bravin, Vandermeer, Brognard, Sambardier, Casals, and Cohen-Holland himself. Looking at the list, there is a noticeable strengthening in the aerodynamics division, with many arrivals from Red Bull and Mercedes. This is a clear sign that Ferrari is trying to address one of its historical weaknesses. And the most significant addition is Frank Sanchez, promoted and in charge of aerodynamic development in September 2025. He does not come from top English teams but from Sauber, indicating that Maranello is looking for individuals ready to take on prominent responsibilities, perhaps betting on less exposed talents. The key issue for Ferrari isn't just attracting new talent, but turning them into real results. Vasseur is working hard behind the scenes to reshape the technical structure quietly, but it takes time. The prancing horse needs continuity and fewer proclamations, because every broken promise becomes a boomerang in front of the fans and the press. The reality is that Maranello is making moves. The departures are noticeable, but the arrivals are numerous and targeted. Now it remains to be observed if this comprehensive reconstruction will genuinely assist Ferrari in narrowing the technical gap and consistently returning to the pinnacle. Arrivabene also expressed his thoughts regarding the situation at Ferrari and highlighted what he perceives as deficiencies in comparison to other teams. Every time Ferrari goes through a difficult moment, the same questions always arise. How much does Maranello's isolation really weigh compared to the technological heart of Formula 1 that beats in the United Kingdom? Maurizio Arrivabene, who previously served as the team principal, articulated clearly in a dedicated interview. In his perspective, there exists a disparity, and it is predominantly industrial in nature. We are a bit behind on composites and aerodynamics, he admits, because we continue to make engines better than anyone else. In England, in the Oxford area, they have developed those technologies thanks to tradition, expertise, and universities directly linked to production. To catch up, we must exert significant effort, but we are progressing steadily. Patience is essential, and Ferrari is on the correct path. Contemporary Formula 1 is primarily centered between Oxfordshire and the Midlands, where over 30,000 people working in the racing industry are concentrated. Moving from one team to another, there requires just a few kilometers of travel, whereas to join Ferrari, one must relocate to Italy. As we mentioned before, it is logistically complicated. In Maranello, there isn't an industrial ecosystem comparable to the British one. Audi, for example, for its entry into Formula 1, will have 3 hubs: Inwil in Switzerland, Nürburgring in Germany, and Bicester in the United Kingdom. A strategic choice to not be excluded from the pool of English talents. Arrivabene, however, believes that Frédéric Vasseur has what it takes to continue the reconstruction. "Vasseur is a very serious and competent person," said Arrivabene. "I found it easy since I spoke Italian and caught every subtle nuance of my team, but he is taking on a big and important task." And then he made a key observation about the development of a single-seater. A road supercar has about 5,000 components and 4 years to be fine-tuned. A Formula 1 car has 50,000 components and only 6 months. If you make a mistake, you carry it with you for the entire season and it is extremely difficult to correct. This is a concept that is confirmed in Ferrari's recent history. Consider the 2016 Ferrari SF16H, which had a gearbox casing that flexed too much, causing many problems and failures throughout the year. Also, there are some errors on the current SF25. Like the rear suspension that has been a burden for months. Arrivabene's message is twofold. On one hand, Ferrari still suffers from a structural gap compared to the British teams, especially in composite materials and aerodynamics. Conversely, the efforts to close that disparity have commenced and ought not to be underestimated. The team is endeavoring to construct a more robust and competitive Ferrari, yet the challenge remains immense. Continuity, investments, and time are needed, without easy proclamations that risk becoming a boomerang. And regarding the complicated situation Ferrari is experiencing, let's look at the situation Lewis Hamilton is facing, because there was also the recent passing of Roscoe, his dog, who accompanied him throughout his career, even in Formula 1, and we need to discuss together before Gunther Steiner's words and then analyze this episode. Bringing the topic back to the center of the debate is Gunther Steiner, former team principal of Haas, who, without any current roles in Formula 1, observes from the outside and did not hesitate to say that someone at Ferrari might already regret the decision. The main point is that Hamilton is struggling to adapt to the SF25, a car that is technically very different from the Mercedes he has driven for years. The Englishman lacks consistency in his results, struggles to understand the behavior of the rear end and to use the tires as he would like. The risk, never so real, is that this could become his worst season since his Formula 1 debut. According to Steiner, with Carlos Sainz, Ferrari would have maintained internal stability and serenity. The Spanish driver was familiar with the team, consistently delivered points, and did not compel the team to shift their development and management strategies to accommodate the car for a new driver. With Lewis, however, time and resources had to be invested to understand how to tailor the SF25 to his needs, often without results. For this reason, Steiner says it would have been better to keep Sainz, in his opinion. Moreover, the cost of the Hamilton operation is extremely high, with a very high salary, support infrastructure, and commercial and communicative implications. And it's a package that, to date, is not bringing tangible benefits on the sporting front. But is Lewis really the problem? Opinions are divided here. Those who closely follow Ferrari point out that the troubles of the S25 did not start with Hamilton. The fundamental problem is both technical and managerial. Maranello assured the Briton of a highly competitive and easy-to-drive vehicle, but the actual situation was quite the opposite. Furthermore, the engineers were unable to deliver the US a customized package, complete with updates and configurations capable of ensuring his comfort. Vasseur himself admitted that the team underestimated the impact of bringing Hamilton in and the complexity of integrating him into an already ongoing project, a rare and significant mission. As far as money is concerned, it's the least of Ferrari's problems. The economic issue is often used as an argument against the Hamilton operation, but in reality it is secondary. Ferrari consistently declines multi-million-dollar sponsorships annually, and they encounter no difficulty in covering the salary of a top-tier driver. The challenge is technical and strategic rather than budgetary. In my opinion, at this moment, pointing the finger at Lewis Hamilton is of little use. If Ferrari were a winning car and he wasn't performing, then yes, it could be discussed. Yet, the SF25 is still far from matching McLaren's performance and even further from Red Bull's. The core issue is the team's ability to create a truly competitive car and offer proper support for a driver of Hamilton's exceptional level in a technical setting that ensures his comfort. Lewis Hamilton is not the main problem. He is rather a symptom of the deeper difficulties at Maranello between unfulfilled promises and a still incomprehensible growth path. And let us observe how Ferrari is making preparations for the upcoming Singapore race scheduled for this weekend. This track might prove to be quite favorable for the red team, so let's explore the reasons why. The prancing horse arrives in Singapore with a clear goal: to turn Marina Bay into a redemption after a 2025 season so far without victories. Charlie Leclerc had marked 4 events in Red, Monza, Baku, Singapore, and Las Vegas as more favorable opportunities, but after Italy and Baku, the outcome remains disappointing. The SF25 has yet to find a strength capable of putting it ahead of Red Bull and McLaren. Monza and Baku have shown the same weakness, a lack of aerodynamic load and the need for extreme setups. But when Ferrari pushes to the limit, there's always someone who manages to push further and make it work better. The SF25 is well balanced, performing admirably in numerous aspects but lacking any standout characteristics. Consequently, competitors can adopt a more aggressive approach and attain higher speeds. Singapore is very different from Baku. Here, pure aerodynamic load and mechanical grip are crucial, especially in slow corners and winding sections. This is also why McLaren becomes the favorite again. The MCL39 performs exceptionally well in corner entry and traction at both low and medium speeds, and it manages soft tires effectively even in high temperatures. Ferrari aspires to minimize compromises on a street circuit such as Marina Bay, where all teams increase the ride height and load the wings, making the lack of downforce from the floor slightly less noticeable. However, to achieve high speed, an impeccable setup is essential, and the SF25 must successfully navigate corners with enhanced front-end directionality and mitigate the understeer that has been a disadvantage throughout the year, particularly in low-speed sections. In contrast to Baku, where numerous corners follow straight-line braking, Singapore necessitates braking while simultaneously cornering and executing rotations. This is precisely the scenario that underscores the limitations of the SF25. Lack of precision at the front and trouble maintaining stability on entry. In Monaco, it showed some promise, but careful fine-tuning will be needed to replicate those gains. The most significant race remains on Saturday, as the statistics indicate that Leclerc is typically further behind the other leading drivers and achieves fewer gains between Q2 and Q3. In Singapore, where overtaking is nearly impossible, beginning from a position behind means ruining the race before it even commences. Ferrari will need to work on tire management to have the right temperature in the first sector, but not on warming them up before the final stretch, which is crucial for extracting the last tenths in Q3. A triumph would not salvage the entire season, yet it would hold immense significance for team morale and the Constructors' Championship standings. Singapore might be the final genuine opportunity to end the 2025 drought, necessitating a precise setup, flawless tire management, and most importantly, a qualifying session without any errors. It is no longer the time for proclamations for Ferrari. At Marina Bay, actions are what matter. Only a precise and consistent SF25 from the start of the weekend can light up the night and bring a smile to the fans' faces. That said, we also need to talk about the Pirelli tires that will be brought to Singapore, which will be the C3, C4, C5, so one step harder compared to Baku. This is because tire degradation will be higher on the Marina Bay track, so we will see how Ferrari will perform in Singapore, but we have already discussed the strengths and weaknesses of Ferrari, and chronic understeer is one of the aspects that worries me the most because Singapore is the Monaco of the East, so it is necessary to have a competitive yet balanced car setup. It is true that the ride height will be higher, and therefore Ferrari will exploit the floor less, which is a positive because when Ferrari lowers the car, others manage to generate more downforce from the floor, and the opponents will be somewhat more limited because Red Bull will use the curbs less, McLaren might be the most competitive, and we could find a situation similar to Hungary but with warmer temperatures. But let's also talk about Hamilton's final farewell to Roscoe, his dog. Lewis Hamilton is going through one of the toughest moments of his private life. After 4 days of fighting in intensive care, on Sunday evening the world champion had to say goodbye to Roscoe, his inseparable English bulldog. For him, Roscoe wasn't just a dog, but a travel buddy at every key moment, on and off the tracks. Roscoe was more than a pet. He was a crucial part of Hamilton's life. He accompanied him in paddocks across the globe, appeared in official photographs, in accommodations between races, and during extended journeys far away from home. For the fans, he had become a kind of beloved and recognizable mascot, a symbol of a more human and intimate side of the 7-time world champion. After 4 days of life support during which he fought with all his strength, I had to make the most difficult decision of my life and say goodbye to Roscoe. He never ceased fighting until the very final moment. Lewis Hamilton expressed on social media, accompanying his words with several photographs that deeply moved the fans. The Brit explained how special that bond was. "I feel grateful and honored to have shared my life with such a beautiful soul, an angel and a true friend. Bringing Roscoe into my life was the best decision I ever made, and I will forever cherish the memories we created together." For Hamilton, the loss came at an already challenging time, even from a sporting perspective. Yet he chose to stop. No focus on Mugello, no social engagements, not even Milan Fashion Week. All to stay by his bulldog's side until the end, just as he had done years ago with Coco, the other family dog. Lewis's message touched many because it tells a reality that goes beyond racing. Behind the helmet and victories, there is a person who suffers from the loss of a life companion. It is one of the most painful experiences, admittedly, and he feels a deep connection with anyone who has experienced the loss of a beloved pet. With his farewell to Roscoe, Hamilton reminded us that even champions have vulnerabilities and affections that make them human. And it is a profound pain shared with countless fans who are presently sending heartfelt messages of support and affection for Hamilton. It is indeed truly unfortunate to witness Roscoe's farewell occur at such a delicate moment for Hamilton. He is the dog who accompanied him throughout the entire Formula One era, and we remember how much he supported Hamilton over all these years. He was a life companion, a travel companion, and so I want to remember him in this video. I really care a lot. But we need to talk about the rumors suggesting Leclerc will leave Ferrari in 2027. Let's see what Nicolas Todt, Leclerc's manager, is preparing for the Monegasque's future. With 2026 set to bring new regulations, engines, and many uncertainties, Leclerc's team, led by Nicolas Todt, has started exploring options focusing on three main contacts. At Monza, Todt met with Andrea Stella, the lawyer and commercial director of McLaren, good students. The second contact is Lawrence Stroll, with whom there have also been discussions. The third contact is the conversations with Toto Wolff, which took place this summer during the summer break. And on the same occasion, Toto Wolff also met Max Verstappen. The possibility of Leclerc's departure opens another scenario. Oscar Piastri, managed by Mark Webber, could become a target for Ferrari. Webber himself admitted that for now, he should stay at McLaren and complete his growth path. Even though Ferrari remains an option, it must first achieve the highest result, the driver's title. In the meantime, it wouldn't hurt to brush up on a bit of Italian. The situation is clear. Leclerc has a contract until 2029, but he might leave in 2027. At the same time, Lewis Hamilton might retire after 2026, depending on how his adventure with Ferrari goes. With the genuine possibility of losing both drivers after the year 2026, Maranello is additionally contemplating a potential return of Carlos Sainz as a secure choice. The Spaniard, despite the tensions behind the scenes, has never publicly criticized the team. As for Max Verstappen, he remains the most coveted prize on the market, but his stay in Formula One is not guaranteed. He loves racing, but he could decide to stop at any moment. It's no coincidence that the organizers of the Dutch GP have confirmed that they will not renew long-term, precisely because no one knows how much longer Verstappen will remain in the circus. For now, everything remains uncertain, and it will probably be the first races of 2026 that will determine the future of Leclerc, Ferrari, and perhaps Formula One as a whole. Let me know in the comments your opinion on all the topics we discussed in the video. From Arriva Ben's statements, and also from Frederic Vasseur's statements. How do you see this weekend in Singapore for Ferrari? Could it be favorable? But especially in the future, do you think Leclerc will stay with Ferrari until 2029, or will he decide to leave earlier? I'm curious to read and respond to all your comments. As always, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any news about Formula One and Ferrari. So from there especially, I'll see you in the next video.